Dawn in California. They want to know what we recommend to study for anti-theism.
Logical fallacies.
Yes.
Okay.
What particular? Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, what do you mean by anti-theism?
Basically books, atheist books, right? I'm studying. I'm on the undergrad level of studying history, seeking to become an educator, and I'm simply looking for maybe a perspective of human civilization that don't.
Yeah. But what do you mean by anti-theism? When you say anti-theism, are you talking about anything in specific? What do you mean by that?
Specifically when we come to American history, these things constantly come up in the defining or ideologically driving documents. Because I'm literally taking a U.S. history seminar right now, and I'm thinking about these things. Right, I'm kind of working on the thesis that argues that there is no such thing as separation of church and state in so-called Western civilization. So basically, from that perspective, my question I have a question and then something I want to add for guidance. So my question is, when we talk about the reliability of the gospel, right? What are we even talking about? Because y'all was just talking about the importance of words and the utility of words and definitions. While I was waiting, I looked up, the definition.
Well, let's deal with one topic at a time. And your first topic, separation of church and states, well established, and I would recommend multiple law books on that and history of law on that simple fact. And there's I can't think of his name now. He's been on the show a couple of times, and he is a lawyer and a constitutional scholar at that. But yeah, I would read books by that constitutional scholars. I don't have any in particular because it's not an area that I'm particularly interested in. Armin, do you have any on U.S. constitutional law?
Well, I know the guy you're talking about from Freedom from Religion Foundation. I also am ashamed to say that I forgot his name.
He's no longer with
FFRF. Oh, he was on our show a couple of times. And Andrew Seidel. Andrew Seidel.
Yes, thank you.
God. Guys, please don't tell Andrew that we forgot his name. Please, nobody send this video.
It's not like we forgot him. We just couldn't put his name and what we were talking about together. Because I'm old. American Crusade, how the Supreme Court is weaponizing religious freedom, the founding myth, why Christian nationalism is un-American. And despite our not being able to remember his name, we both know Andrew. And he is an excellent constitutional lawyer. And his books are fully cited, so you can go and find where he gets his information from and chase that rabbit hole as far as you want. But yeah, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, so I can't give you anything on those topics. And if you're talking about religion in the history of the U.S., I don't think we should hide that at all. Just like we shouldn't hide everything we did to Black Americans and to the Native Americans. We shouldn't hide any of that. We should put it on display so that we know when we screwed up and how we screwed up, and so we don't screw it up again, which is where we're headed down to now, right? So I don't think we should hide that. So when you talk about anti-theism, I figure you're talking about how do we actually combat religion in America. And I think the best way to do that is actually study the religions themselves so that you can talk intelligently to whoever about those religions, to whoever you're talking with. Most people sitting in the pew don't think too deeply about it because they are human beings and they have to survive and live. And this is part of the things that they do. And so you need to be somewhat familiar with what they actually do believe. And what's the difference between a Catholic and a Lutheran? You can't talk to a Catholic the same way you would a Lutheran, even though those two religions are fairly close together. In terms of, what they actually believe, you have to know what the differences are. So studying religion is a good way to also to find ways to combat it and to be anti-theist. But I'm not a big fan of anti-theism.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah. I am a fan of let's get people thinking critically and encourage people as much as possible to critically think, and everything else falls away, right? Everything else is just a byproduct of getting people to want to think about what is going on in their lives and whether or not what they believe is true, and to understand how their beliefs affect their actions and what the consequences of those actions are. I think that is a much better plan, but that's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm. I deeply appreciate that, and also for opening
before
up
you go,
before
you go, I do want to recommend that you could, for any type of argument, just learning the logical fallacies. You don't even need a book for that. There's a lot of resources online. On YouTube, for example, there's a lot of videos that goes over the logical fallacies, and if you learn them and learn how to use them effectively without sounding smug, like maybe naming them is not a good idea, just knowing them, but also referring to them without naming them in an argument, that is very, very effective. If you could, instead of just naming logical fallacies, being able to easily explain to somebody why something is a fallacy without even mentioning the word fallacy, that would make you a very, very effective debater, and you will be able to just fight against all forms of nonsensical beliefs, not just let alone religion. So that's one recommendation. And also, it's not just about learning them, because learning the logical fallacies and stuff, that's just easy. But then you require practice, like getting into debates, and also noticing your own fallacies also is very effective if you learn how to do that, if you catch them while you are making them. So that's another very effective tool. Also, I want to recommend a book. There's this book I have. It's a bestseller on Amazon. It's written by this guy named Armin Navbi. It's called Why There's No God. And I did ask permission before mentioning this book from the crew before. So Why There's No God. It was a bestseller. It is a bestseller on Amazon by me, written by me. It's a very, very small book. It's a very short, very easy read. A lot of people don't mention that they just managed to read it in just one sitting. Simple responses to 20 common arguments for the existence of God. So I do recommend my own book.
I really appreciate that. Really, really, really appreciate that. And I was taking notes while I was listening. And to keep it brief, also while I was waiting, I looked up, what the definition of gospel is, and and that's where it told me, the revelation of Christ. But then I also looked up the definition of a revelation, and basically, I guess I have to ask y'all, and I'll leave y'all with this question: what exactly are the revelation of Christ?
According to who? Right. Because there's 1,000 different denominations, right?
Okay. Right. Which adds to what you were saying, which is why we learn the history of these things, right? Because we literally couldn't. Wow. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. That's the problem with the Gospels in general, right? There are a number of contradictions in the Bible for which there are apologetics. But when you go look at the apologetics, it's stuff they're reading into the Bible. And these are coming from people who believe that they're taking the Bible literally, and yet they can't. One of those is the Passover meal. When did Jesus eat the Passover meal with his disciples, or was he executed on Passover? And you have 3 Gospels that claim that he ate Passover, and you have one Gospel that says that he was executed on Passover. And that Gospel is the Gospel of John. Why? Because John makes a big deal of Jesus being the sacrificial lamb. In order to be a sacrificial lamb, you've got to be executed on Passover. Now, there's an entire apologetic that goes into how people thought about time and all this other stuff. but it doesn't really address the question of why would these two things be so different if you're going to take the Bible literally, and because you can't. Yeah, there's a lot of things with the Bible. So and it's multiple guess. You have people who claim the Bible is anti-slavery, and yet we can quote quite a few passages that say it is. That's the problem with the Bible. It's multiple guess, and all the answers are correct.
Don, if what Jim is telling you right now, if you find that interesting, then I would recommend lectures by Bart Ehrman, which you should be able to find easily. Mm-hmm. That will, if that level of detail in analyzing the Bible is something that you're curious about, that's one resource you should look into. Bart Ehrman, he's amazing. If I had time, I would spend more time like watching his lectures. They're fascinating.
Yeah.
Bart Ehrman.
Yeah.
Bart Ehrman. Okay. All right. And then also, if I may, y'all had two other guests that spoke to kind of the LGBT community, and basically what I would describe, I think they talked about what I would describe as a retrogression. And I came up with this I was writing a paper evaluating. It's very short and succinct, and I want to see if y'all feel that this coordinates with what my two other community members of the LGBT community were talking about. I said, though semantic contradiction ails this evaluation, America, the independent colonial North American economy, represents the most advanced form of colonial politics. Semantic contradiction, in fact, locks Euro-American thought, the birth child of Western civilization, in an auto-cannibalistic retrogression.
I would actually have to take some time to unpack what you just said, because I'm not entirely sure what precisely you just said. If you could send that to me, and I'll be happy to respond offline, unfortunately, so I can actually figure out exactly what you were talking about. And I apologize for that, but there was something there. I just don't know what precisely it is. So
basically kind of like how y'all was talking about how society is kind of retrogressing based in, you know what I'm saying? And I was doing my best to, academically speak to that.
Right. I'm not an academic. I'm a software engineer. But yeah, I think we are regressing. Yes. I think we're going backwards faster than we think we are. And it's a horrifying thought.
Yeah.
Yes. I want to thank you for the time in the community that you're providing, and also the resources and whatnot. And thank you.
All right. Thanks, Don. Have a good day.
I think if we zoom out, if we zoom out, we're not regressing. If we zoom in the past, like a couple of years, we're regressing. But if you look at a more zoom out picture, it seems like I think we're doing good.